closely at the human body, a sovereign masterpiece of biological technology. We are operating on a highly advanced network of divine hardware. But right now, this hardware is crashing. We are experiencing a global, system-wide failure, marked by skyrocketing rates of chronic illness, widespread mental fog, and a catastrophic collapse in human fertility. Modern convenience is often cited as the cause for this decay, but the speed and uniformity of these biological failures suggest a deeper structural breach of the system. To map this breach, we have to view the body as a hacked network. The food, water, and environment we rely on are now functioning as targeted malware, engineered to dismantle our biology from the inside out. The first major breach targets our power supply. Under the Green Revolution, agricultural engineers replaced living, micro-rich soil with a sterile industrial grid. This shift moved our food supply onto a crude, synthetic cocktail of NPK fertilizers. The primary malware deployed was glyphosate. Patent US 453308A reveals its function, a potent chelating agent, a molecular handcuff. It seeks out vital minerals like zinc and iron in the soil, binding tightly to them. This physical blockade prevents essential nutrients from ever entering the plant root. This soil sabotage creates a perfect illusion of sustenance that is completely hollow. It guarantees widespread nutritional deficiency, starving human cells at the foundational level, and disabling our biological firewalls before the deeper internal hacks even begin. With the firewalls down, the attack targets a highly specialized receiver sitting at the exact geometric center at the brain, the pineal gland. The pineal gland contains a dense array of piezoelectric calcite microcrystals. These tiny geometric structures act as a livermole biological transceiver, vibrating and converting ambient electromagnetic frequencies into bioelectrical signals our brains can process. To disable this antenna, an industrial byproduct called hydrofluorosilicic acid was introduced directly into the municipal water supply. Bypassing the digestive system, this chemical accumulates right in the central gland. When fluoride ions reach the pineal gland, they magnetically bond to the calcium, encasing the sensitive vibrating crystals in a hard, inert shell of hydroxyapatite, a substance as rigid as bone. This targeted calcification permanently petrifies soft tissue, turning a functional crystalline transceiver into an inert rock and severing the biological hardware from the quantum field. Next, the system attacks our replication drive, the endocrine system. The strategy began in the mid-20th century by quietly saturating our domestic environments with petrochemicals. Chemicals like PFAS, often called forever chemicals, and phthalates act as endocrine disruptors. Because their molecular structure closely mimics naturally occurring hormones, they bypass our cellular security to bioaccumulate inside the liver, kidneys, and blood. This chart shows global plasticizer production mapped against average male testosterone levels over the last few decades. As plastic exposure surged, testosterone plummeted. Dr. Shanna Swan has proven these phthalates block testosterone in the womb. Now the infiltration reaches deeper. Cellular biopsies confirm microplastics successfully breach the placental barrier to surround developing fetuses and heavily infiltrate testicular tissue. Constant exposure to these ubiquitous toxins is physically terraforming human biology. It is rewriting our reproductive source code to force the population into an increasingly infertile and androgynous state. The final internal strike targets the core engines of the cell, the mitochondria. The primary agent for this destruction is the industrial seed oil. Sold as vegetable oil, products like Crisco were originally born from toxic cottonseed waste. They are highly processed machine lubricants that were rebranded and poured directly into the human food supply. These oils are made of polyunsaturated fatty acids, or PUFAs. To extract them, industrial seeds must be subjected to extreme heat and bathed in petroleum neurotoxins like hexane. Ancestral diets provided stable, saturated fats to build rigid, healthy cell walls. When you consume seed oils, your body has no choice but to build its cellular membranes using these floppy, highly unstable lipid chains. Inside the warm, oxygen-rich environment of the human body, these unstable fats spontaneously rust. This lipid peroxidation creates microscopic, highly reactive free radicals known as oxalams. These act like cellular shrapnel, literally shredding your mitochondria from the inside out. Feeding a population oxidized machine lubricant guarantees the structural destruction of their cellular energy. It creates a perpetual state of metabolic disease and chronic inflammation that secures immense recurring profits for the pharmaceutical industry. When you pull back from the microscopic wreckage and look at the whole board, the geopolitical reality of this multi-vector attack comes into sharp focus. The dead soil, the severed pineal gland, the corrupted reproductive systems, and the rusted mitochondria operate in total synchronicity, systematically dismantling human vitality at every scale. This systematic sabotage results in a biological state defined by low energy, infertility, and total dependence on the corporate structures that control their survival mechanisms, a version of humanity effectively optimized for total external management. But our biological hardware is remarkably resilient, and it can be aggressively reclaimed. The Earth already provides the antidotes. By utilizing ancestral diets rich in stable fats, drinking structured water, and employing neurogenesis catalysts, we can actively flush this synthetic malware from our networks and repair the cellular damage. You cannot fight a spiritual or geopolitical war if your cells are built from the enemy's poison. Reclaiming your sovereign health and rebuilding your divine hardware is the ultimate act of human rebellion.
All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're basically putting on our detective hats and acting as impartial investigators. We're going to audit this massive, highly detailed dossier of source material that presents a unified and honestly pretty conspiratorial theory. The core claim here? That there is an active, multi-front biological war being waged directly against human anatomy. It's a wild, fascinating ride through environmental science, biology, and esoteric philosophy, so let's jump right in. To set the stage for this entire analysis, the documents actually kick things off with this quote from a podcast conversation involving Joe Rogan. It highlights what the sources argue is a profound, chemically induced shift in modern human evolution. The assertion is that we aren't just changing culturally, right? But that our very physical forms are being altered by the modern environment in incredibly strange ways. See, according to the text, our bodies aren't just, fragile meat suits. They define human biology as divine hardware, a highly advanced resonant operating system that's currently under deliberate siege by what they call an Archonic control grid. Basically, this is described as an overarching, hidden power structure aiming to downgrade our biological capabilities. So here's the agenda for the case files we're opening up today. We've got 1, agricultural scorched earth, 2, antenna calcification, 3, chemical castration, 4, mitochondrial sabotage, and finally 5, the verdict. Let's start with case 1, agricultural scorched earth. The dossier poses a really striking question right out of the gate, asking us to completely reevaluate the Green Revolution. What we're typically taught was this miraculous triumph of feeding the world is framed instead as a deliberate attack on the living biome, all designed to centralize control and weaken the human physical system. It all comes down to this stark contrast. On one side, we have ancestral living soil, literally teeming with microbial life that makes essential trace minerals available to plants. On the flip side is the modern dead earth doctrine, relying on synthetic nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, or NPK fertilizers, treats the soil as a totally sterile medium. And the result? It forces the rapid growth of profitable but nutritionally empty food that absolutely starves our physical hardware of essential micronutrients. And to maintain these sterile crops, the herbicide glyphosate is indicted as this sort of chemical multi-tool. Pointing directly to actual chemical patents, the argument is that glyphosate operates with a devastating dual function. First, as a potent chelating agent, it binds to vital minerals in the soil so they can never even reach the plant. Second, as a patented antibiotic, it acts like a carpet-bombing campaign on our internal gut ecosystem, totally disrupting our physical and cognitive health. Moving right along to case 2, antenna calcification. The premise here is that we are unknowingly crippling our spiritual perception hardware, which obviously prompts us to ask, how exactly is this unseen blinding occurring? What specific part of our biology is actually being targeted? Now, what's genuinely fascinating here is that this esoteric theory is grounded in actual hard biological data. They highlight research from the 1990s showing that the pineal gland, right in the center of the brain, contains tiny calcite microcrystals. Because these crystals possess piezoelectric properties, the idea is that the pineal gland functions quite literally as a microscopic biological antenna, capable of acting as a transceiver for electromagnetic frequencies. The documents outline what they call a chilling mathematical confession. If you take the average size of these pineal crystals and apply basic physics formulas for resonant frequency, calculations suggest that our biological antenna resonates precisely at 440 megahertz. And this is presented not as some random coincidence, but as a specific frequency actively targeted by historical military radar systems to jam human consciousness. But it goes further. Industrial fluoride, specifically hydrofluorosilicic acid, placed in public water supplies, is alleged to be a targeted chemical weapon. Medical research is cited indicating that the pineal gland acts like a magnet for fluoride accumulation. The mechanism described is that this chemical bonds with the delicate calcite crystals, forming bone-hard hydroxyapatite. Basically, it's literally turning this soft biological transceiver into dead, calcified stone. Next up, Case 3, the chemical castration cartel. Looking at the population data, we really have to ask, why exactly is humanity experiencing such a massive, unprecedented spike in infertility, hormonal chaos, and physiological demasculinization? To put that into perspective, the sources heavily cite a landmark 2017 meta-analysis. It revealed a catastrophic population-level drop in testosterone of over 50% in Western men across just 40 years. 50%. This is framed not as some accident of modern life, but as a species-level chemically induced event. This whole biological collapse is attributed to what the text calls a chemical castration cartel. The main culprits? Endocrine disrupting chemicals, or EDCs, like the herbicide atrazine and plasticizing phthalates. These chemicals act as synthetic xenoestrogens, essentially molecular mimics that flood the body, induce severe estrogen dominance, and scramble our fundamental biological gender polarity right from the moment of conception. And to truly grasp the sheer scale of this chemical saturation, a terrifying 2024 scientific study is brought to our attention. Researchers discovered that a single liter of standard bottled water contains an average of 240,000 nanoplastic particles. Let that sink in. We are literally drinking the very plasticizers that disrupt our hormones. This leads to a horrifying biological breach. Recent toxicological studies listed here show microplastics completely infiltrating 100% of human testes and 100% of human placentas tested. Combined with data showing shrinking anogenital distances in male infants, the hypothesis presented is that this is a targeted operation. The end goal? To engineer a sterile, dependent, post-gender human population. That brings us to Case 4, mitochondrial sabotage. The core argument here is that the absolute greatest nutritional lie in modern history was convincing the public to replace natural, traditional dietary fats with highly volatile industrial waste products. The text draws a really sharp contrast here. On the one hand, you've got stable, ancestral saturated fats, your butter, your tallow, what they dub guardian fuel, which is essential for building resilient cell membranes. On the other side, you have industrial seed oils. These are highly unstable polyunsaturated fats, or PUFAs. When ingested, the claim is that these oils undergo lipid peroxidation. Actually, scratch the jargon, it means they literally rust and rot inside the warm, oxygen-rich environment of human cells, totally destroying our mitochondria. The dossier identifies a specific roster it calls the Heatful 8 seed oils, stuff like canola, corn, and soybean oil, found in almost all processed foods and restaurant fryers. Widespread consumption of these highly oxidized, chemically extracted oils is presented as the primary driver of systemic inflammation, neurodegeneration, and metabolic disease. And the kicker? They're often disguised as heart-healthy foods by compromised regulatory agencies. Finally, we reach the verdict. Reclaiming the divine hardware. This explainer leaves us with a really provocative final thought. Now that you've seen the evidence presented about how the water, food, and air impact the human operating system, you have to ask yourself, will humanity just accept this alleged role as chemically engineered livestock? Or will we rebel, ruthlessly audit our biology, and reactivate our dormant divine hardware. It's a fascinating, albeit intense, lens through which to view modern health, and it definitely leaves you wanting to dig deeper.